A roomy interior. It is much like the great outdoors. Can this Kia Sportage fill the gap in your life when you need more room to haul your things? Come with me and we will examine this new vehicle together.
What's in a wheelbase anyway? Well, I'll tell you, a lot. What you're looking at here is 108 inches. Actually, I tell a lie, it's 108.5 inches of wheelbase. And that makes this thing stretched out pretty big for such a compact. Or is it a compact? Is it almost a midsize? Well, as we all know, there's a trend going on in the automotive industry that's been going on for 20 years. And that's models are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I don't think it's necessarily because people are becoming larger, although people are becoming larger, actually. The fact of the matter is we find we have more and more stuff, we have more and more passengers, we have more and more reasons to have more space on hand. So the Sportage, being a compact SUV, is trying to maximize its ability to be versatile by giving you more room. And it does that. It absolutely does that. But this version is even more versatile thanks to the fact that it's a little bit more off-road worthy. Now we have a package here. It's known as the X Pro. Whee! Don't you like that headlight treatment, by the way? Wild, interesting, and very Kia and very unique. But the X Pro versions are a little more off-road savvy in that right away you notice it has BF Goodrich off-road type tires. When I say off-road, they're not serious like mud and snow tires, but they're close. They're much more adept at going through snow and can take you further down the trail than the normal regular Sportage. And this being the X Pro Prestige, it's also loaded with all kinds of wonderful accessories and things to make your life easier. In other words, it's got a lot of tech on it. But like all things Kia, and this is something I really admire about the company, things are still fairly intuitive and recognizable when you get in the car. You're not dealing with a whole lot of complex interfaces that you haven't seen before. This is right down the lane of what you've seen before, especially if you're familiar with the Kia products, because they're extremely good at making you comfortable right away. And that's one of my favorite things about this car. Now, what else does it have that's interesting? Well, for those of you who shun, I tell you, the world of turbocharged engines, this one doesn't have a turbocharged engine. It has a regular inline four displacing 2.5 liters and putting out 187 horsepower. It's normally aspirated, so once we get under the hood, you'll see it's a lot more recognizable for those of us that have been dealing with four-cylinder engines that are not turbocharged for years, meaning there's a lot less plumbing, a lot less stuff to worry about. And yeah, it doesn't have the power and the torque of a lot of the turbocharged engines, but as I've discovered driving, especially with the 8-speed automatic transmission, it's perfectly adequate of dealing with all this stuff. So, without further ado, let's look at this engine and let's talk about it. If you hear the sound of horses, it's not horsepower, it's actual horses. And they've all gone mad, and I think one of them tried to steal this Kia, but I got him out of here. So, okay, here we have 2.5 liters of traditional greatness. Personally, I'm very fond of this engine because it's not turbocharged, and there's nothing wrong with turbocharging, except here's my only gripe with it. It just adds a lot of complexity to the engine. And they're making it more reliable all the time, but it just takes a lot of getting used to. What does turbocharging do for you? A lot. I mean, it gives you a lot, especially when it comes to low-end torque. It does great things. But this is a good engine. I like it quite a bit. How much power are we talking about with our 2.5 liter Inline Four? Well, 187 horsepower at 6,100 RPM and 178 pounds of foot-pounds at 4,000 RPM in the torque department. So that's a nice healthy output for a vehicle that weighs roughly 3,700 pounds. So it's fairly light because, like I said, it is a compact, even though it's got a lot of room in it for a compact. So what else do we have? Well, we have very interesting modern stuff. Primarily, it is gasoline, excuse me, it is gasoline direct injection instead of port fuel injection, which is becoming really common. But as you know, there are some drawbacks to gasoline direct injection. The thing I have about it is that the amount of pressure that it has to pump through to work properly requires a very, very high degree of pumpness. Why is that? Well, first of all, why do we have to have the gasoline under so much pressure in order for it to work in the engine? Well, when you have port fuel injection, the fuel is actually shot into the injection system before it gets into the cylinder. So it doesn't have to overcome the pressure of the cylinder itself, the compression, which is usually around 10 to 1, something like that. It depends on what the vehicle is. But with gasoline direct injection, since it goes directly into the cylinder, it has to overcome the pressure of the cylinder, meaning it has to overcome that compression. And that's why it's pumped up so much. And they've done a remarkable job at making these systems safe in the event there's any kind of a leak, or if you're in an accident, it doesn't start spewing fuel at that high pressure all over everywhere. I mean, it can happen, but it almost never does because the system is pretty foolproof, and it has all kinds of different sensors and things that tell it if it needs to completely shut down the fuel injection system, and it will quickly, bang, just like that. No more high pressure. So that's one problem with gasoline direct injection. The other problem has to do with your intake ports, because over time, a lot of times there can be a lot of carbon buildup. When I say over time, I'm talking about when you start to get 80, 90, 100,000 miles and above. There are some engines that have had problems with carbon accumulating in the intake runner system and other places. So there's a lot of ways of dealing with that. What a lot of manufacturers are doing now is they have both gasoline direct and port fuel injection. And it uses one or the other depending on the circumstances of running. But one of the great things about when it does use the port fuel injection, it cleans out all that residue that is caused by the gasoline direct injection. So what's the advantage of gasoline direct injection? A lot of times more power and better fuel economy. Not dramatic leaps, but in general, it just works better. So that's something to consider, because you're not going to have any choice anyway. If the car you're buying that you're interested in probably has gasoline direct injection these days. So that's just the way of things, much in the way that most of the engines out there, the 4 cylinders now, are turbocharged. However, this one is not. And this one also has this really amazing isolation system on here to quell vibration. Then you got this huge pad right up here to bring your noise down. And by the way, this hood weighs, the car weighs 3,700 pounds, the hood weighs probably 1,000 of that. It's an unusually heavy hood compared to what you encounter so much of the time these days. The hoods are made out of aluminum and they don't weigh hardly anything, but this one's heavier. It's more substantial, if you will. So how does everything work? Well, here's your air box right over here, and with the air filter within, and the air comes right around there, straight forward, doesn't go through any turbocharging or anything like that. It goes directly into this incredible plastic, which is becoming the way of things, your intake system. and your intake plenum, some people would call that. Other people would call it a manifold. There's all kinds of names. It is known by many names. But the fact of the matter is, don't be alarmed by the fact that everybody's going to plastic. I mean, I prefer metal for a lot of different reasons, primarily the fact that we're about to all die of plastic. But the fact of the matter is, what it does for the manufacturers is it lowers the weight, which is always good, but it also allows them to shape these intake ports into shapes that can optimize the tumble and the flow of the air into the engine fairly straightforward and fairly easily from a production standpoint compared to doing it, casting it in metal. That's one of the big advantages. They can do all kinds of tricks to further increase efficiency, power, and all the rest of it. Because of that, plastic allows them to do that. It's from a fabrication point of view, it works really well. So what else? Well, we are, of course, longitudinal? No. Transverse, like most 4 cylinders. 1, 2, 3, 4. Cylinders are right there. I could pop this right off, but I'll leave it on. That's another thing that's disappearing is engine covers, and the manufacturers are saying all kinds of things like it doesn't do anything for performance and all. The fact of the matter is, I like it because it cleans up the engine bay, and they don't weigh anything. And some people say, oh, it keeps heat in. Not that much. It doesn't make that much difference when it comes to the dispersal of heat especially from an aluminum engine. So there you go. It's a peppy little guy, and they've done amazing things with smoothing it out. Matter of fact, if you compare it directly to a lot of the competition, including, for example, Toyota's RAV4 2.5 liter non-turbocharged inline engine. This seems a little bit more refined to me. I wouldn't say it's better. I would say it's a little smoother and it feels more refined. Well, just time will tell about how it's going to be in terms of longevity and reliability. So, what else? There's your battery. It's huge. It's got an enormous battery on it for a small car. But that's becoming common too because there are so many things that are reliable on the electric. All the electric bits. You got all these sensors, you got all this stuff, and you got your gasoline direct injection, which also that pump takes a fair amount of power. So you need all these things on startup. Once the engine's running, of course, it gets the bulk of its power off of the alternator. It generates its own electricity to power the engine. But when you're first starting up everything, including when you start the car, it fires up all the computers. You need a pretty substantial 12-volt battery, especially if you live in an area where it gets really hot and in the winter it gets really cold, because it's the heat that kills batteries and it's the cold that makes them stop working. So anyway, that is your engine. And again, attached to an 8-speed transmission that is automatic in nature and all-wheel drive. All-wheel drive, incidentally, is standard on this particular trim level, I believe, with both the X Pro and the X Pro Premier. Is it Premier? Is that what it's called? Wait a minute, looking. God, I can't read my own handwriting. What the hell? Prestige, yes. With the Prestige and the regular X Pro, you get all-wheel drive standard. Onward. Well, here's an interesting thing. This particular Kia Sportage X Pro Premier, or whatever the heck it is, Prestige, sorry, has something in common with a lot of off-road trucks. It has 17-inch wheels, which is really interesting. Great choice in my opinion, because I think it's a great all-around size, because you also get a substantially thick is in from here to here. You see, this right here, this goo here. That's real good at absorbing shocks when you're off-road and on-road and hitting potholes and everything else. I just like 17s. I think that's a real good size overall. The tire size itself is, in fact, where is that? Just said 235/65 R17s, and these are your Trail Terrain TA BF Goodrich tires. Now, if you look beyond the wheel, you will notice we have a very substantial brake rotor and brake caliper, and the brakes on this thing seem real good. It actually looks more substantial than I would have expected for this type of vehicle, and the weight we're hauling around and everything else, but it does real well. By the way, the trailer towing on this, I believe, is 2,500 pounds, in that neighborhood. I'll double check. but I believe that's what the tow rating is. But again, we have our square and yet not square styling. And you always go to the rear end. You can also tell right off the bat that the rear door is quite large, meaning there's probably quite a bit of passenger room in the back. And there is, and you'll see it very shortly. But as you can see, we have a kind of a fastback roof line, but not really, which is great because it increases. You have a very healthy amount of cargo room in this vehicle. And this being the Prestige, we naturally have a power liftgate because power liftgates are just cool. And inside we have, I believe, around 35 cubic feet, or 39 cubic feet of space with the rear seats in the upright deployed position. And that swells up to about 74 cubic feet when you lower the seats. Again, very big. And I don't know if you can really tell, there's two other great things about this cargo area. First of all, the liftover is fairly low. It's a real good height. It's about just above knee level for me. And I'm 5'8". So I think that's a real good all-around height when you're lifting your heavy parcels and putting them in the back of your vehicle, or you have a dog just got to jump up in there while they're young, no problem. So it's a real good mix as far as you have a fair amount of overall room, and at the same time, it's in specific dimensions such as the width. It's a very wide vehicle for the class, so you get all that generous room. And what do we have underneath here? Let's have a look. Woo! You know how happy that makes me. You know, there was a time I was perfectly furious about temporary spare tires because I wanted a full size. Nowadays, I'm just happy they have something. This is your temporary spare tire and all your necessary accoutrements to change it. Excellent. And that's kind of a little bit of a bump to the off-road resume because more and more vehicles are going to run flat tires or tire repair kits. If you pop a tire off a wheel during your off-road soirees, which can happen, especially if you're getting all hardcore and you lower your tire pressure a bit to help your traction situation. You can pop a tire off of a wheel, and if you just have a flat repair kit, it's not going to help. It's not going to help at all. But if you have a temporary spare tire, at least you have a fighting chance of getting home. So I really like that. I think that's a good move. Whee! Looky there. So like I said, very wide, very commodious. The more you dig into this Kia, the more you like it. And especially if you're more of a traditionalist. You got your non-turbocharged engine, you got your temporary spare tire, you got all these things that I find extremely useful from a practical standpoint. Because I always look at these vehicles with the perspective of somebody that's going to own it for several years, and it's going to be a reliable vehicle that will handle all your needs. Kind of like a horse. See, a horse, it's very reliable over there. So there we have it. Now it's time to really dig into the interior, which is a lot of fun because this being a Kia, you know it's going to have sounds of nature. All hail Kia! Hey, before I do anything, you know this is going to happen. Sound of nature. Experience the universe. Well, let's go on a sailing ship. Oh, I like that. Okay, where were we? Oh yes, welcome to Sportage. Sportage. It is in fact a Kia. Sportage, of course, stands for certainly powerful. No, it doesn't stand for that. It stands for the sport utility that has evolved dramatically during its tenure with Kia. We now have basically one of the more competitive compact SUVs on the market. And I say compact, it's a little bigger than a compact in my view. It has excellent room in it. and you'll examine this with me pretty much right now. But this is, of course, our X Pro, so you will see certain cues that come from the X Pro package, which is more than anything else a little bit more. I say X Pro, but it's the X Pro Prestige. So it's like got lots of wonderful, good little bits and pieces and things on it that are great to make it a very good trim level for people who actually want to take this a little bit off-road, like on your logging trails and things like that. So anyway, here is our instrument cluster. Now, do we have choices? Well, of course we do. And I'll go to setup over here, and I'll go to screen layout over here. See, I'm pressing this. There we go. And then we can, one of the most popular options is to just link to whatever the drive mode is. We'll do that for the moment, and we'll cycle through the drive modes, and you can see how it also changes the instrument cluster. So, as we, oh, holy cow, we're getting in some deep swell now. Oh man, I'm feeling seasick. Well, I'm not feeling seasick actually, but anyway, let's look at our modes. What we're sitting on right now, I believe, is Smart. And that is the mode that is more intelligent than the other ones. It is 100% written by AI, and yes, I'm making all this up. The fact of the matter is, I'm going to turn that down a little bit. The fact of the matter is, oh, wait a minute. Now, this is something that's kind of unusual here. Let me show you this. God, I'm trying to show you 5 things at once. Okay. This little knob right here is usually for the radio, but at the same time, it is also for the climate control. So if I wanted to turn the volume up, look what I've done. When I touch that, now it's back to the climate control, and I'm heating it up or cooling it down, you see there? And then I hit it like that, and hit it like that, and hit it like that. Now how do I get it to stop from being a radio? Excuse me, from the climate going back to the radio? Do you hold it all the way down like that? I don't know. It's very strange, if you ask me. Of course, you have some redundant controls that are right here on your steering. For example, if I want to change stations and things like that, which side is that? There's our volume right there, and this is up and down on our favorites that we've chosen for our audio entertainment if we're on one of the radio bands. So there you go. that's what's up with that. Now it's gone back down to this, and if I lower this, I'm actually lowering the volume now. But you got to be careful with this knob because it has a mind of its own. So anyway, back to where we were before we got so distracted. It's funny because I consider Kia to be one of the more intuitive control layouts, and the way they set up their cockpits are quite good. But anyway, we're looking at an analog simulation, which of course it's a flat screen, and sort of like some of the later GM products we have, like the new pickup, the mid-size pickup, and for that matter, I believe the full-size Silverado and what's that other thing called? Sierra. They have what it looks like almost a complete panel that goes all the way across, and you have your instruments over on this side, right? And then you go, and here we have our main display like that. They're different displays, but the way they've melded them together, I think, is I like it personally. I think it gives the dashboard a whole much nicer flow, and it just kind of makes sense as we evolve into this 100% glass virtual display system, and all the analog instruments mechanical analog instruments are all starting to disappear. We're getting more and more of that. So, all right, let's adjust our drive mode here. Now, if we go to snow, it looks exactly the same as it did under Smart. And if we go to Sport, oh my God, look at there. It's as always with any sport mode, you have red. But this is on like a white background, so that's kind of exciting. Then we were at Smart earlier, we went Sport, and this is normal. So normal and Smart are pretty similar, as you can see. Now you can, if you wanna like use the Sport instrument layout while you're in one of the other drive modes, such as Smart or normal, you can do that. Is there an eco? Wait a minute, I didn't see an eco. Wow, we have no eco mode. I guess they're all eco modes. It's just a little 2.5 cylinder, 2.5 4-cylinder engine after all. It already gets good mileage, right? Well, it's telling me that on the 87 miles I've driven it so far, I'm getting 27.1. Always take that with a grain of salt, because I discovered that when the computer is telling you what kind of gas mileage you actually are getting, when you fill up, you might find a different value. And it's usually less than what they display. Some manufacturers are better at getting it right than others, but it's all over the map there. You know what I'm saying. So what else do we have here? Well, if I hit this is what will change our center display. There's a compass. And this is a display that will show you what particular wheels are driving at what particular time. This being all-wheel drive, you have both the front and the rear system. And this rear system, again, comes into play more times than you might think, because there's so much more going on. There's so many more sensors than these systems used to have. It used to be 100% the rear drivetrain would not kick in unless the front drivetrain was slipping. And that's still true, but at the same time, there are certain modes and times where the computers determine that providing traction on the rear end may actually enhance handling and or fuel economy. So that can be interesting to watch as you drive along. Although you should be keeping your eyes on the road. Don't just study this. Anyway, what else do we have? This is if we had our adaptive cruise control on, this would be telling us about if there's a car in front of us. And it's interesting, the vehicle you see in the display is actually the same color as the vehicle you're in. So I love that. And this again is one of our trip meters. This is century fueling. And there are adjustments you can make within here. Like if I do this, there's our tire pressure. And we have two different modes here. And this particular thing, we'll go over here, and now what do we get? Driver attention warning is off, because I'm never paying attention anyway. And then, what about this? Nothing. There's no changes. So it all varies as far as which particular mode you're in. I want to go back now to where I was, which was right there. So, again, it's very straightforward. There's nothing about a Kia that you're going to sit here for 30 minutes figuring out or reaching for the owner's manual for most of you, because it's very, very straightforward. And I love that about these cars, to be honest with you, because these days there are some vehicles out there that are just a real mess when it comes to figuring out what in the world they're up to. So, as you can see, our steering wheel is pretty heavily laden with all kinds of things. Here is our this is our cruise division right here. This is turning on and off your cruise control. This is your following distance. This is whether or not you want the vehicle to do lane tracing, which is steering itself. And we'll talk more about that when I'm doing it. And so that's primarily what we get here. This is what I was just touching to change your center display. So, and over on the left side, this is if we're going to talk to the car. This is our volume. This is our mode as far as our sound system is concerned. This is our telephone. If we want to talk to somebody on the telephone, we can use that. And this particular star can be set up, bink, as you want it. It's a custom button, and you get to pick what this particular button does. And look at all the different choices you have. Isn't that great? Look at all this. These are all different choices you can make for that particular star, and that's great because you can pick it as you choose. I tend to equilibrate this with the when you have sport modes that allow you to do the customization of the sport mode. In other words, you can have the sport mode do different things with the steering depending on what your desires are. And this is kind of similar to that in a way. We're seeing more and more of this in modern cars, where you can pick and choose what you want various controls to do. And I think that's great. That's a good thing. That's one of the areas where some of this advanced technology is actually coming in quite handy. As is normal practice, you got on this stalk over here, which is also your turn signal, you got your various lighting arrays. on and off and automatic and all that good stuff. Plus this car is equipped with fog lights. And on this side over here is where we have the stock for your windshield wipers. And again, straightforward, normal, standardized, and everything else. Now here's something interesting. Look at the crazy design of this vent here. This is very similar to the front headlight. Kind of like the driving lights up front. Kind of a strange shape just like that, which I think is neat. There's continuity in styling and design, which we always love to see that. Now that we're in the center area, I did show you this. This is a great feature that is rapidly disappearing, is some dedicated switches where you just press to go to certain things. Like if I want to adjust the media, I hit it just like that and there we are. And if I want to go to let's go, my favorite, Lively Force. We'll go to Lively Force. But you have all these different things you can access instantly. You want to go to the map, you just go there. Want to go to navigation, you just go there. I love having dedicated switches that instead of having to get in a menu in your central screen, you actually have a direct choice to go to. This also, we have here is, again, these two guys, these nice rotary knobs here have multiple functions, and that's one of the only things on this car that's taken me a little bit to try to figure out, is because it depends on what this operates, both the ventilation and heating system as well as the radio in terms of volume and on off and that kind of thing. So why they didn't have dedicated, completely separate dedicated climate control, I don't know. But that's the way they decided to do it, so I just hope they stop there. They don't continue this blending of everything. It's almost like they're trying to get rid of any kind of physical interface, and I guarantee you what they're ultimately looking at is they want you to just talk to your car, to tell the car what to do, and there's a lot of drawbacks to that, which I won't go into in depth now, but you can be talking to a passenger and suddenly the car wants to talk to you, and for some reason that really sticks in my craw when that happens. So we will migrate away from the sort of heating and ventilation system, which by the way, the auto climate, which is on now. See, here's the rest of our. You have to have the auto climate on in order to look at all that stuff, but it's only temporary. If you turn it off, then it will come back up and you can adjust it, but it only gives you a second or two to make that choice. So anyway, let's get out of there. Down here we have our USB ports. You have both USB-A and USB-C. You also have a very nice area to charge your phone right down there, your wireless charging QI interface. For reasons that do not make sense to me, they have the engine start-stop button here. It's the second car in a row I've had recently that puts it down here instead of putting it up here where you kind of expect it to be. Again, it's like they're trying to migrate some things around and, whatever. But it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Over here, this is wonderful stuff. These front seats on our X-Pro Premier Prestige, we have some dedicated buttons for heating and ventilating the front seats. And steering wheel right there. You can put your steering wheel heat on it. Again, beautifully, easily accessible right there. You can do it, you're done. You don't have to go through a bunch of menus to find stuff. Our shifter is a 100% mechanical normal interface. When you put it into drive, you can kick it over here, right here, and you have manual access to the 8 speeds, which you just go up and second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, and back down again, and then back over to drive. Very straightforward. I love it. This does not have paddle shifters. There's nothing back there for your paddle shifting needs. But at the same time, and it does release the park brake. That's interesting. And we do actually have over here a dedicated park brake switch. Last vehicle I tested didn't have one at all. You just put it in the park, and that's when the emergency brake or park brake comes on, which I think you need a dedicated switch just in case, but that's me. Okay, further back, where we have here, well, this is our hill descent control. This is our auto hold for holding your auto. This is turning off your engine start stop, which is automatic and works very, very well on this vehicle. Something that's kind of interesting to me, most vehicles that I've experienced, when you have it in the auto start stop mode, if you put the vehicle in park, the engine stays running. You would think a lot of times once you put it in park, it would just knock off to save fuel. But it doesn't do that on most cars. On this car, it does, though. You put it into park, I'll demonstrate. Well, we're in park now, and the engine is still running because I've made it do that somehow. It somehow knows. It somehow knows that I want the engine to continue running while I'm talking to you here. Anyway, but I have experienced it and put it in the park, and it has in fact turned the engine off, which I think is kind of great, because perfect example I always bring up drive-throughs. When you're going through a drive-through, you want to burn as little fuel as possible. With hybrids, you want to punch your EV button so that you're just on electric power, because it's ridiculous to sit there and burn gas while you're sitting in line and moving forward like one car length at a time over a period of hours. Sometimes it seems like, or if you're leaving that Taylor Swift concert with 10 billion other people, and you're going to be in that stop and go traffic for at least an hour just getting out of there. So that's a real good time for full electric mode if you have a hybrid, but it's also a decent time if you're going to be sitting parked for a while for the engine to shut down. And it still runs everything else on the car, including the steering, which is electric, power-based. So that's an interesting thing I noticed on this. What else do we have here? Well, here is our parking alert, which will tell you if you're about to back into something. And incidentally, on this vehicle, the emergency rear, what do they even call that? Let's look at our Monroney here. What is the official Kia term? Full inside side curtain airbag with it has our blind spot stuff, and I don't even see it on here, but it did it. What it did was it detected that there was a critter running right around the back of the car and activated the brakes. Now, am I wrong? Was this the vehicle I had before? Oh, here we go. Advanced blind spot collision. Rear cross traffic collision avoidance assist. That's what that is. And that, oh, sorry, there it is. That is a very useful feature if you have children or small animals, or you just tend to back into stuff. The car will actually activate the brakes. I've been in vehicles where it didn't work well. In fact, I've been in certain vehicles, a full-size pickup, I won't tell you the name, that the brakes just came on for no reason when I was backing up. There was nothing behind the vehicle. And when they come on, I'm telling you, these brakes, they just boom, they stop the car. And if you're not expecting it, it's a bit startling. But there you go. It's a good safety feature overall. And like I said, it seems to work very, very good on this car. Here's our cameras. Look at all our camera joy. Let's do this. Let's spin about. Woo! Look at there. Now, for some reason, it thinks the car is white now. It thought it was silver earlier. And I never understand that. Come on now. Come on. Oh, that's what it wants me to do. Looky there. See, you can pick here. There's a vehicle over there. There's a vehicle next door. There's bugs flying around the car. You can see them. And then we have our backup cameras, which are extreme. This is a really good size. Something else I noticed on this car I thought was really interesting. When I was backing up in a parking lot, the rear camera is wide enough that you can really, really see around the back of the car well. If I turned around and looked, I couldn't see as well off to the far right or the far left as I could if I looked at the camera. And sure enough, this was a really crowded parking lot with a lot of pedestrians, so I could see so much better through the camera, which I think that's excellent, because I'm sure a lot of time and thought went in and they always do when they put these rear cameras on, to get the right size lens on there to optimize that. And that's why a lot of them have different choices. It's electronically changed. It's not actually physically change with the lens itself, but it gives you some different aspect ratios to look at. This is a really good backup camera, though. Again, it's like the rear cross traffic alert. The back side of this vehicle is well looked after. It's very well, from a safety standpoint, it's extremely good, and I'm impressed by that. What else? Oh yeah, here's how I was driving, adjusting our drive mode. You just turn this dial right here and press that, and it will lock the center differential. What's the advantage of doing that? Well, when you get into the rough stuff, or you get into deep snow or some mud or things like that, that will lock together in a 50-50 mix your front and your rear drivetrains. So that can come in very, very handy under super slippery conditions. And it's great to have it, again, a dedicated switch to do that for you. And it's right there. It's right there in there. And in here, we have various bird flu equipment. And it's a pretty deep little, it's not a huge console, center console, but it's deep enough that you can get a fair amount of stuff in it. Our upholstery, by the way, is called Syntex, which again is another one of these that you would swear is leather, but it's nicely pleated and perforated for your ventilation comfort, and it also has pretty aggressive side bolsters. So it keeps you in the position pretty good if you do go to rocking back and forth during your off-roading activities. And our glove box, look at all the stuff in there. It's very roomy in there. Yes, you can get a tablet. You can get I'd say a moderately sized tablet. You know, I just had a dream the other night that I broke my tablet. And that was really weird. And I was like, oh God, I got to get another one. Now look at here. If you see here, that's a dog. That right there. I'm going to show you that dog. Is there a dog out here? There he is. All he ever wants to do is play, that dog. Okay, we have an interesting thing with our panoramic roof. If we do this, it'll open all the way up, but it opens all the way up, and at the push of a button. So if I want to actually shut this, God, there's a lot of bugs out there, and stop it, it will not go all the way back. Well, let me see if I can do this. It will not go all the way back in the back unless this is open, apparently. Unless I'm doing something wrong, which is entirely possible. But that's your one switch right here. Oh, that's how you do it. Nope. That's just to tilt it. That's to put it down. That's to lower it. And can I stop it? Yeah, there we go. Okay. It's a little tricky, but you can just get the shade all the way open for your rear seat passengers to enjoy the firmament or the trees. Look there, springtime. Nice, huh? But as big as a fan I am of these panoramic roofs, it's interesting to see how so many different manufacturers are doing all kinds of different things in terms of how they shade this. And this to me is the best approach, because you can completely make it opaque if you want to, and it also will help keep the car warmer in the wintertime. Or you can open it up so that you can see right through it, or you can open it, and you can't open it in the back, but you can open it to the normal moonroof size in the front. So that's it with that, and I love that. All right, now then, back seat. Let's go. Vicious dog. Hey, careful, boy. God, he's crazy. Look at the size of this door. This size, the size of the door portends the room within, and it opens at just about 90 degrees. Very easy access. And the belt line is a little bit higher on this side right here, and the windows go 100% down, which I really like. But man, there is a lot. I have the seat back a bit in the front, and there is a lot of leg room in this vehicle. Really, really nice. Very moderate drive shaft tunnel. Nothing to worry about there. Not a big deal. And this, I guess that's for hanging your coat right here. Interesting, huh? You could also put a tablet there and watch things. I think, Matt, there's a little bit of rubber in here. I think that is exactly what that is designed for. I'm guessing, but I think that's what it is. You have a grocery hook right here. I mean, they think of everything. Kia is amazing that way. And then you have a USB, that looks like a C, USB-C right there, and a USB-C right there. So you have a total of 2. Now, unfortunately, these rear seats are not heated, but they are very, very comfortable. And the headroom is excellent. The couple distance is excellent. Let's check out our armrest here. It's a little on the low side, but it's perfectly serviceable. But the thing that'll really get you is how much room you have back here. It is very, very spacious. If you're a larger individual, you will not be complaining about being back here. Do we have a little bit of adjustment? We sure do. Oh! Yeah, you can recline at your leisure. Very easy. The handle's right there. And this is just a real excellent environment for your rear seat passengers. It's impressive. Again, you get some more of this cool Kia Sportage thematic design stuff. Oh, and what's this here? This is telling me that it's a Harman Kardon sound system. Is that what it says? Hang on there. Let's have a look. Yes. Harman Kardon. It sounds good too, as we enjoy our sounds of nature. So, with our 60-40 split, you have a lot of cargo room. You have a tremendous amount of headroom. So this, like I say, I think compared with most of the competition in the compact realm, you have more room in this vehicle, and it's got so much going for it in that regard. So from an interior standpoint, I give top marks to the Kia Sportage X-Pro Prestige. Thank you for your attention. Ah, my friends, join me, if you will, with the sounds of nature. Well, I still love that. You know, I'm gonna harp on that every single time I drive a Kia, Hyundai, or Genesis, because I love the fact that they have your little soundtrack that you can listen to. That is, oh, it's marvelous. I hear little birds and things. And it is springtime, so spring heading into summer, of course. And that's what we have to listen to, is this beautiful music. It's not music from the hearts of space, although we have that too on our Sounds of Nature. Because after all, the solar system is part of nature. Now, it's no monster powerhouse, this vehicle. With 187 horsepower on tap, pushing around 3,700 pounds, plus me, plus some of my gear. It's not a remarkably powerful engine. However, it is a very smooth and refined engine. And I'll be very, right now it's telling me I've been averaging about 26 miles per gallon. And well, this is interesting too. I did have a trip, oh, there it is. Yeah, I've driven at 32 miles so far. So, given this information, you would think that one of the big advantages to not having real interesting thing about turbocharged engines and fuel economy is if you're keeping your foot out of it and it's not under a heavy load, and in other words, there's not a whole lot of turbocharging going on, fuel economy can be really good with a smaller displacement engine, which almost all of the turbocharged inline fours have a smaller displacement compared with non-aspirated, non-turbocharged versions. So you would expect that you might get a little bit better mileage with this, and on balance, I think you do. I mean, I've driven so many inline fours with turbos lately, and the fuel economy's been okay. It hasn't been bad, but it hasn't been great either. And largely that's because I've actually had to use some of the engine's power range for all kinds of things. A little bit of spirited driving, not too much. But if you have and this is especially obvious if you get vehicles that are trucks or SUVs that are hauling a lot of weight or even pulling a trailer, the turbocharger has to work a lot more. And in the balance of that is your mileage drops quite a bit. But the good advantage is if you're not doing anything, if you're just primarily putting along. Well, no matter if you're putting along or like making the engine work a lot with a non-turbocharged unit like this one, the fuel economy is still pretty solid. And even if you're really pushing the engine, your fuel economy doesn't drop to the degree it drops with a turbocharged engine. It's something to remember while you still can buy a non-turbocharged engine. Although who knows what the manufacturers have on the drawing board. Turbocharging is there not because of fuel economy, but because of emissions. So, now as you can see, excuse me, our X-Pro Prestige does a very nice job in terms of keeping primarily keeping the fact that it is a taller vehicle in check, and it's a pretty flat cornering thing. I'm actually pretty impressed with how well it does, considering all the things that go into play when you have an SUV. You have higher ground clearance. You have tires that may not be the last word in terms of traction on dry pavement. And I think that's the case with these, although they're good. They're real good tires, these BF Goodrich TAs. Trail Master 5000 Turbo, or whatever they're called. I forget. But this, if there's one word I have to encapsulate this latest iteration of the Sportage, it's refinement, because it really is quiet for the class. And again, I'm pretty much comparing everything I say is comparing to the other members of the compact SUV class. With that wider stance, that's one of the things that helps keep the handling great, is the wider stance. And it does have a longer wheelbase than most, I believe. At 108 inches, that's a pretty decent wheelbase for a small vehicle. But it also, there's just numerous other things. The smoothness of the engine is really nice. And as you may recall from looking at the engine compartment, they've gone to a lot of effort to smooth out and quiet down the inline four-cylinder engine. They've done a really good job at that. Here we go up a hill, under power. See, I don't have it on the floor or anything, but the power is good. It's just not in the same class as a lot of the other vehicles that are turbocharged now. But, if you compare it though to something like the RAV4, the RAV4 doesn't at the moment have a turbocharged version that I can think of, unless they've snuck something in I don't know about. But you either get the hybrid or non-hybrid version, and the hybrid version has enough boost out of the electric side of things that it has a lot, I believe 219 horsepower as opposed to 187. That's a big difference. That's a lot more horsepower. And then you also have a lot of good low-end torque, again supplied by the electric motor. Is there a hybrid version of this? Yes. And there is a plug-in hybrid version, I believe. Is there a full electric version? I don't think so. I'll double check that and correct it if necessary, but I'm almost positive you have this version, which is the gas version, pure gas version, and then you have the hybrid version, and then you have the plug-in hybrid. And it's real fascinating to me watch the plug-in hybrid market, because if you go to your Kia dealership and you want this vehicle, but you have a interesting decision to make. Which version of this vehicle do I want in terms of powertrain? Naturally, the hybrid's more expensive than the non-hybrid, and the plug-in hybrid is more expensive than the hybrid and the non-hybrid. But it's not a huge leap in price, I don't believe. But I'm really interested in seeing how popular plug-in hybrids get, because I still have real mixed feelings about that. Again, like with any electric vehicle, like with any vehicle that you plug in, it really depends on what your lifestyle is, where you live, and whether, if for so many people it's a real good choice. You'll be using a lot less fuel. You'll be cutting down on emissions, which is always fantastic. Cutting down on your carbon footprint, all that good stuff. And you also are not sacrificing a thing in terms of performance. So there you go. So you get to pick from these things. Now, boy, what would I pick if I was going to get one of these? Probably the hybrid. I love hybrids, and we have one. So I would probably pick the hybrid version, but not necessarily. I wouldn't pick the plug-in hybrid. Doesn't really work for us. And I would seriously consider this one too, because we'll have to see what the fuel economy is, but I think it's going to be great. And the thing that impresses me the most is just the overall refinement. That's A. And B is the fact that it's got so much room in it. I mean, for a compact vehicle, smaller vehicle, you got a lot of room here. And it just seems to be all around a good performance. Now, it used to be Kias and Hyundais in particular were a bit cheaper than everybody else in the class. Not anymore. They're all getting pretty much to be cost roughly the same. And Kia has been very good at always, since get-go, installing the latest technology in terms of, well, for example, adaptive cruise control. And adaptive, which we're going to engage, by the way. We're going to engage at this time. There it is. Dink. And we set her at our speed we want to go here. Right there. All right. And you also have the option, and I like it, it's just like the Toyotas and a lot of other cars. If you want to have your lane tracing or your lane discipline, you can push the button and it'll take over. And it is now steering itself. But it's right there to turn on and off, which is great, because there's times this can come in real handy, like when you're driving down the highway somewhere and you want to go after that cheeseburger. It can help you. It can help keep the car steering right on the straight, so you won't make like crazy moves when you're moving your burger around and you're steering with your knees. You don't want that. You don't want them crazy moves. Now we'll have to see what happens in terms of our adaptive function. It is reading the cars in front of us. I have about a 2 car length setting up for my following distance. It goes from 1 to 4, I believe, on this vehicle. And so far everything seems fairly inobtrusive in terms of, again, if we go down to the glory days when this technology was first emerging, there are all kinds of foibles. For example, like it would zoom up on the back of a car and then slam on the brakes to maintain the following distance. Now the systems seem to look further down the road and do things in a more gradual manner. This Kia's always been one of my favorites in terms of how well their automated driving systems work. They seem to work very well. And I'm talking across the board here. I'm talking with types of semi-automated systems that cost $8,000–9,000 premium to have it on your car, and this works as well, if not better, in most circumstances. It won't do some magic things, like it will not pass when you're on a 4-lane highway and there's a car in front of you going slower. It will not automatically turn on the turn signal, move into the next lane, and pass the car. It will not do that. That is the realm of the most advanced systems, but it's also something I would argue that is the least necessary. Hey, you know what this reminds me of? It actually reminds me of, instead of your 2024 Kia Sportage X-Pro Premier, it reminds me of some of the Kias of old. It has a real sturdy look to it. And as you can see, our control arms on our rear suspension right here are made out of nice stiff metal. They're not made out of aluminum, which is different than normally when we're back here looking at these suspensions. Most of them are on your so-called higher-end vehicles, and they tend to use a lot of aluminum components. But what we got here is a very straightforward design where you have multi-links here. There's a link. Here's a sway bar right there. You can see that pretty clearly, I think. And what do we have up top? Well, there's our drive shaft to our rear suspension. And as you can see, the front part of the A-arm back here goes all the way up forward there, so it's nice and stable, in other words. Now, something that should look very familiar to you, a number of things should look familiar to you if you've been following these little soirees underneath, is we have a unibody construction, but we have a cradle here, a subframe, if you will, that runs across the rear, and that is what the is actually bolted to the bottom of the unibody, and then the suspension is bolted onto that. So you have a degree of isolation from the unibody, although not as much as you get if you have a body on frame construction. This is much more, it's more automotive, but it's also very, very sturdy, provided that you make your unibody a very stout, stiff box of a unibody, and then you use these components here, you'll end up with a very solid construction and something that can take a fair amount of abuse. One of the things you'll also notice right away about this particular version, other than these wonderfully aggressive tires, is there's a good amount of ground clearance here. Now, our rear differential is right here, and this guy right here, that is your actuator that engages and disengages the rear drivetrain. The drive shaft, of course, is tucked up nice and high, and let me show you now. There she is. Oops, there she is right there, running up in there. And then you have a very, what I would consider to be a very easy to understand and conventional exhaust arrangement. It literally comes out of the 4-cylinder engine, straight back. You got your one of your catalytic converters, probably two, but one of your converters right there with a shield on the bottom of it. Then you have your muffler right here, and then it comes into this resonator right here, and there's one exit right there. So it's kind of nice to see something that's so simple. There's not a whole lot of twists and turns to it, and it doesn't have 3 or 4 different pipes. Not that there's anything necessarily wrong with that in the least, but it's just, I don't know. I always go back to the simplistic, because simplistic tends to be more reliable and less expensive to replace should you have to do it. Another thing that's really good about this rear suspension is this here. You got, the way I've parked it here, you've got a compression here, a high degree of compression, and then a high degree of extension over here. And this thing stays on the road. This low side, extension side is still off the ground. And some vehicles I park in this exact spot, sometimes that driver's side rear tire is literally completely off the ground, which is not good for your traction. You have to have a strong enough anti-spin system that will transfer the torque from the low side to the compression side to get you off the rock. And believe me, I mean, as simple as all this sounds, some vehicles have to struggle a little bit to get off of this, where I've parked it. So far, this Kia has done a fine job. It seems to be a very well-balanced system. And again, like I said right there, there's your thing, there's your actuator that provides power to the rear wheels when needed, or if you push the button that locks the front and rear differential, in which case you will have power to all 4 wheels. So there you have it. No aluminum here, just steel, like I said, and a very healthy amount of ground clearance, so that you can take a fair amount of off-road-ness with this vehicle. And there's a good skid plate right underneath. Let me find it here. There we are. This panel right in here. Oops. God, I can't see. There we go. There is your skid plate for your front workabouts. In other words, workabout. I had a friend that used to call anything that had to do with the drivetrain or transmission a workabout. I don't know why, but he did. But that is well protected. It's not only mounted high up, but it has a good skid plate underneath it. The rest of this, on the sides here, you have this polymer material that looks fairly substantial, and that's to protect all kinds of components, including right here is the bulk of your fuel tank, you see. And this right here is probably part. Do we have like a 2-part fuel tank here? This looks like it's a round cylinder sort of thing. I don't know. It could be also running a bit. It looks like it's all contained right in that spot. That's pretty interesting. I've forgotten what the fuel capacity is. I'll guess, and I'll say it's probably about 18, 19 gallons, something like that. I'll put it at the bottom of the screen what the fuel capacity is. But anyway, so you have a good degree of protection, and you have a good degree of ground clearance. So yes, this particular X can go off-road provided that you don't overdo it too much, and you have the additional benefit of these really good tires that should offer a degree of traction. So I wouldn't think twice about like a fire road or something like that for your off-road excursions. And you also get a very good ride on the pavement.
Well, here we have the sticker on your 2024 Sportage X Pro Prestige, not Premier, all-wheel drive. The base price is $37,990, and with options we came to $40,030. Very, very nice vehicle. Your overall fuel economy is 26 miles per gallon, 23 on the city, and 30 in the highway. And all in all, I have nothing but good things to say about this, and I'm especially fond of, while it's no powerhouse, the 2.5-liter gas direct injection engine is not turbocharged, which is a good thing because it makes it a whole lot simpler to deal with. Overall, it's got a lot of room. It has a real nice ride. It has that typical Kia build quality and simplicity that I really like. And of course, more than anything else, it has sounds of nature. So check it out. If you're in the category of compact to almost mid-size, this could be a real nice vehicle for you. Thanks for watching. Be careful out there, and we will see you next time.
Do whatever the tube tells you. You dress like the tube. You eat like the tube. You raise your children like the tube. You even think like the tube. This is mass madness, you maniacs. In God's name, you people are the real thing. We are the illusion.